worker?
No,
Yeah.
that is what really launched her, isn't it?
That's right.
But years later, Hugh, I was on a panel with Patty Duke, and I remember at the time thinking that she was, I don't know, distraught. And now I understand why.
Yes, and understand is a key word, because that's exactly what Patty Duke is trying to do, to promote understanding. Her enormous acting talent has been on display since she was a child. And tonight you'll see her courage, because she has suffered extremely because of a mental illness that went undiagnosed for a long time. That illness is manic depression. Lives are being wasted because many people aren't aware of the symptoms and treatment available. Patty Duke is trying to change that.
There was something in me, and I remember very well, in the black hole, thinking, if I ever get out of this, I'm going to make sure that nobody I know ever feels this way again.
When Patty Duke first made that promise to herself, she did not believe she could ever act on it. But today, a healthier and much happier Patty Duke is doing just that, which brings her on this particular occasion to Washington with her husband, Michael Pierce, and baby Kevin. She has come here to testify before a Senate subcommittee, hoping to raise the level of money and awareness about mental illness.
In 1982, I was diagnosed as manic depressive. My mental illness is a genetic, chemical imbalance of the brain. It manifests itself in dramatic mood swings from states of euphoria or agitated, out-of-control highs to disabling, often suicidal lows. From the onset of the symptoms of this illness in my late teens until proper diagnosis and treatment at the age of 35, I rode the wild roller coaster.
As a young actress, Patty Duke made an indelible impression on anyone who saw her play the role of Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker, with Anne Bancroft as her teacher, Annie Sullivan. Her extraordinary portrayal of the girl who couldn't see and couldn't hear earned her critical acclaim first on Broadway at age 13 and then in the motion picture. In 1962, she became the youngest actress up until that time to win an Academy Award. A national celebrity at age 16, she began starring in her own television series, The Patty Duke Show, playing the role of two cousins with very different personalities. Ironically, behind the public Patty Duke, there was also a different personality, a young girl whose given name was Anna, who was beginning a descent into a private hell.
I knew at a very young age that something was not right. Or even more intensely, there was something wrong with me. Again, I thought it was just that I was not a good person, that I didn't try hard enough. It didn't become apparent, again, as with many people. The illness itself doesn't, the symptoms, the very overt symptoms, didn't start till my late teens. And that was with a manic episode.
Now, when you say manic depressive, the words, the manic is a high and the depressed is a low. What are the symptoms? What kind of things did you find yourself doing when you're in the manic phase of it?
In mania, I spent a great deal of money for things I didn't need. Now, that seems a silly symptom, but it's a symptom of the illness. Flights of fancy, meaning, almost delusions of grandeur. You feel euphoric. You feel nothing you do has any kind of negative consequence. You can go anywhere, say anything, be anybody you want, marry anybody you want. I married somebody I didn't know for 13 days. I didn't know this man. I sublet my apartment to him, and the next thing I knew, I was in Las Vegas marrying him. And it seemed just sort of okay. It was as if you said to me, would you like a turkey sandwich? And I said, well, all right, fine.
Now, between that part of the cycle and the depressed part, was there a brief interval of what that would be normal, or did you crash right away?
Again, as the cycles increased in frequency, they also increased in intensity, so that the span of sort of level time got shorter and shorter as the years went on. There would usually be a manic and a depressive cycle every 3 to 4 months. The depressive end lasting much longer. The deep black hole from
Now,
which
what-
you cannot extricate yourself.
Is there a way to describe that in words? I know.
It's hard because most of what's going on when you're feeling that way it doesn't happen in thoughts. It's in feelings.
Feelings.
You almost can't get a complete thought. You feel as if you are utterly alone in the world. For me, I couldn't get out of my bed except to go to the bathroom. Eating didn't seem to matter. I cried a great deal. The only thoughts I would have is there's no hope, and I'm a terrible person, and I really should just kill myself because my children are suffering, my then husband was suffering, I'm certainly suffering, and if there's no fix for this, then I may as well not be here, and then the suicide attempts would happen.
The illness that Anna is describing in painful detail is shared by over 2 million Americans. We played excerpts of Anna's interview for Dr. Donald Klein, Director of Research at New York State Psychiatric Institute. We asked him whether Anna's description of her manic depression struck a familiar chord with him.
I was really impressed. She was 99.99% bang on. She really described it well, accurately, thoughtfully.
How large a role does genetics play in this disease?
Depressive illness runs in families. That's clear.
Yes, my mother was diagnosed only 10 years ago as being unipolar or clinically depressed.
Just depression and not
Right.
the
She
manic.
didn't have the good end. She didn't get up there,
Oh,
sort
yeah.
of
That's kind of being
on the
cheated. Worse,
trapeze,
isn't it?
on the high wire.
You say, if it's genetic, how can it be precipitated? Or what can precipitate it? Now, you must understand, there's all sorts of things that are genetic, like heart disease, that can be precipitated. If somebody has a weak heart and they go skiing and they eat a lot of salt, they can throw themselves into congestive failure. What having an organic illness, a genetic illness does is make you more vulnerable to the environment.
The environment that fueled Anna's illness was a traumatic childhood. Her alcoholic father left when she was 7. Her mother struggled with her own undiagnosed depression, and young Anna and her brother earned money by taking modeling and acting jobs. In time, Anna's upbringing was taken over nearly completely by her strict acting coaches. One day, the obedient young girl learned that her name had been changed to Patty Duke. Anna is dead, she was told. But Anna was very much alive, and from her late teens, when the disease began to assert itself, until she was diagnosed at age 35, she was tossed between euphoric highs and crushing lows.
Everybody knows what it's like to feel really sad about something. This sort of depression goes even further than that. And it's based not on any real stimulus. And you feel completely alone. Even if there are people around you telling you that they love you, showing you that they love you, demonstrating support, it's terrible to say, but it's meaningless. Whatever this thing is that takes over you, that says that you are worthless, that really the only answer is to kill yourself, is so much more powerful that's the calling you relate to.
Anna, I know it's a sensitive area, but I think it's important to get your views on your attempts to take your life. When you really took steps to do that, what happened? What did you do?
I did it a lot of times. So the methods varied. I usually took overdoses of pills. I didn't have pills that could do that because my doctors were aware of my instability, and so I was never given prescriptions like that. But I would get them out of other people's medicine chests and save them for what I knew would be one of those really down times. And it usually came after some sort of argument that I had begun either with my husband or children. And my behavior would be so angry and so vicious that I then couldn't live with that guilt. And they were better off without me. And I would go in the bathroom and lock the door and I guess make enough noise so that people knew what I was doing. And I would take the pills, and usually the door was either broken down or somehow opened, and then would begin the rather, ugly scene of you must vomit, I won't vomit, you must vomit, and the doctor on the phone, and the doctor prescribing an emetic, and it's very odd. This is not the first time that I've had people in my home, and we've talked for purposes of a viewing audience, but it is the first time that we've talked in this way, and it's very odd to sit here and answer you and look down the hallway and know that that's the bedroom, that's the bed from which I could not get up unless it was to go in and attempt suicide.
For years, a proper diagnosis eluded Anna's psychiatrists, largely because they did not see the manic swing of the illness. As she explains, when you're manic, who needs a doctor? Well, the roller coaster ride finally ended in 1982. Anna was going through a divorce from John Aston, with whom she had 2 children, plus 3 from his previous marriage. She was regularly seeing a psychiatrist and working on the television series It Takes Two. One day, medication she was given to treat a throat problem triggered a manic episode, and for the first time, the psychiatrist witnessed her in that state. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell together.
And he said, I am convinced now that you are manic depressive. And I have to tell you, Hugh, they were the best 2 words I ever heard. That whatever that it was in me, had a name. And he quickly followed it by telling me that lithium was the medication of choice, and that probably once I started taking it, in about 3 weeks, we would begin to see results.
Lithium is our best understood, most studied, most reliable drug for manic depression. It works well for about 70% of patients with manic depression.
Recently, people said to me, so what does it feel like? And it's almost impossible to describe because it doesn't feel like anything. The only thing I can say is that I guess it feels like the way you feel. It feels normal. It is the absence of that black hole and the absence of that euphoric, bizarre place that you've gone to. But it's not the absence of highs and lows. In order to get on with your life, you have to forgive yourself, and you have to somehow do the best you can to make amends for the pain that you've caused. The toughest was feeling that I could ever be trusted again, specifically by my children, for having attempted suicide. Not only having attempted it, but having attempted it in their presence. These children went through utter hell, and they didn't have the benefit of a chemical imbalance going for them. It takes a long time. I know I spent a good deal of years, as a matter of fact, leaving the bathroom door open so they could hear that Mom was only brushing her hair or brushing her teeth.
You could have resumed your career as an actress and never said anything publicly about this, but you made a different choice. And what was the reason for that?
I think stigma, as you well know, is born of ignorance and fear. And so the more that we can teach people, the less frightened they'll be. And again, to me, of course, the most important is those who need help, who are feeling the way I felt when I was lying in that bed for 3 months at a time, will know that I'm not inventing this, that it's real, that the hope exists for them.
I had the privilege of seeing both your roles in The Miracle Worker. Is there anything in that play and or movie, any line that you felt speaks to people's need to know about life in a way that would relate to what you're doing now in trying to help a situation?
There's a speech that Annie Sullivan has prior to the moment when Helen gets the message. And for some reason, even prior to my diagnosis and successful treatment, this speech has always been very powerful to me. And I never realized why, maybe until even this moment. And the speech, if I recall properly, goes something like this. Reach, reach, I wanted to teach you. Everything the earth is full of, Helen. Everything on it that's ours for a wink and it's gone.
Reach. Reach. I wanted to teach you. Oh, everything the earth is full of, Helen. Everything on it that's ours for a wink and it's gone. And what we are on it. The light we bring to it and leave behind in words.
Why, you can see 5,000 years back in the light of words. Everything we feel, think, know, and share in words. So not a soul is in darkness or done with, even in the grave. And I know one word, and I can put the world in your hand. And whatever it is to me, I won't take less. Annie was talking about words. I'm talking about feeling the fullest that we can feel and succeeding to the best of our ability and celebrating the human spirit.
What an extraordinary piece. What a brave woman to help people this way. I think, Hugh, that lithium to control manic depression is a little bit like insulin with diabetes. You do have to take it every day.
You do. It's a lifelong proposition. You have to look at it that way. And particularly in the case of lithium, any brain-active drug, you should have very active medical supervision.
People should not be ashamed of this, but there must be so many people who have this illness and don't know it.
2 out of 3 people with major depressive disorders are not currently in treatment. But Patty Duke got her life and career back on the track by getting properly diagnosed, and there's hope for a lot of people.
Thanks to her.